They truly are a professional and dedicated team, making Fremont a community we can all be proud of. That was never more evident to me than during the flood of March of 2019. Without the amazing efforts of this entire city and utility teams, our community would have been devastated. I will never forget the hard work and dedication of this staff that initial week in March of 2019. It truly was amazing, and we're a better community for it. Thank you to our community partners, Bob Missel, the Dodge County Board of Supervisors, the Roads Department, Dodge County Emergency Management, Three Rivers Health, Midland University, Metro Community College, Fremont Public Schools, Archbishop Bergen, Trinity Lutheran, Methodist Fremont Health, Lower Platte North, NRD, Village of Inglewood, Greater Fremont Development Council, Fremont Area Chamber of Commerce, the BID, Northeast Nebraska Economic Development, Main Street Fremont, Fremont Community Foundation, the YMCA, and the many nonprofits serving the Fremont area. Thank you to the current city council members. Over the past 2 years, we have dealt with the March 2019 flood, the February 2020 flood, and the pandemic that began on February 28th of 2020. Even with this adversity, we have continued to grow and thrive, leaving the community economically strong and in good hands. Fremont was recently awarded a AA bond rating increase on the city side, improving from an AA minus up to an AA. Congratulations to council and staff. That's amazing news, and allows us to receive lower interest rates on the highway allocation bonds for the Southeast Beltway. Lastly, a big thank you to my entire family, my wife, Judy. She has truly been my partner during this entire process. I've been truly blessed. She's been a big part of our success over the past 10 years. We look forward to the extra time for family, grandchildren, travel, and relaxation. Tonight, I challenge the new council to focus on the upcoming comprehensive plan. It will lay the groundwork and foundation for the future growth of Fremont for the next 15 to 20 years. It will take dedication, communication, and collaboration of you as council members, the city staff, and the community to produce this roadmap. Thank you all in advance for your hard work and service. The reward will mean continued growth and development for Fremont and all of its citizens. Thank you for the opportunity to serve. Good luck, and God bless all of you. Thank you. So with that, we'll move on to item number 1, dispense and approve November 24, 2020 City Council meeting minutes. Staff report.
Mayor, there was a small adjustment to the minutes. I uploaded that and provided that information to council. And so I would ask that the minutes be approved as provided.
Any comments from the public? Comments from council? I would take a motion in regards to the approval of the minutes. Councilman Yerger?
Make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Councilman Legman?
I will second that.
Cast your votes.
Councilmember Bechtel, how do you vote?
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item 2, resolution 2020-241 regarding return of city property by council members McLean, Bechtel, Jacobus, and Mayor Getchman. This time we'll have staff report.
Mayor and council, I reached out to those council members and the mayor and have received all items. That would be the extent of my report.
Any comments from the public? Comments from council? I would take a motion in regards to resolution 2020-241. Councilman Legban,
I make a motion to approve resolution 2020-241.
Councilmember Coons.
And I'll second that motion.
Cast your votes. Councilmember Bechtel,
Yes.
The motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
at this time, we're going to drop the gavel, adjourn, sign, die. Do we need a motion? Take a motion to resign or to adjourn the final meeting of 2018-2020. Time is 7:13. Councilman Jensen,
I will make that motion.
Close enough.
Councilmember Jacobus.
I will second that.
Cast your votes. Councilmember Bechtel,
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
we're adjourned.
All right. Thank you very much. We will now call the regular meeting of the 2020-2022 City Council to order. The time is now 7:15. The Opens Meeting Act is posted on the rear wall next to the agendas. We will now do roll call.
Please vote for roll call. And then Councilmember Gibson, if you could just vote yes on your box there. Thank you. 8 council members are present, Mayor.
All right, very good. Moving on, next item is mayor's comments. First thing we would like to do is give out the service awards. So we will do that for the council and Mayor Getchman. So first would be council member Susan Jacobus. Susan Jacobus was council member from 2016 to 2020. She was council president from 2018 to 2020. Next would be, you want to have come on up? All right, next we will do council member Linda McLean. Linda was council member from 2017 to 2020. Linda, come up and accept your service award, please. Thank you. Next, I will do this council member, Matt Bechtel, who is not with us. Obviously, he's on Zoom. So, but let's show our appreciation to Matt. Give him a round of applause for his time on council. Next will be Dev Sukram, and Dev was on Planning Commission from 2009 to 2020. So this would be his service award for Planning Commission. So Dev. And last but not least, we'll do service award for Mayor Scott Getchman. Scott was a city council member from February 2006 to June 2020. He was also city council president from June 2010 to December 2010. And he was the mayor of the city of Fremont from December 2010 to December 2020. Let's give a warm thank you to Mayor Scott Getchman. Yes. All right, moving on to mayor's comments. Before I left home tonight, I have 3 daughters, Sarah, Hannah, and Ava, 6, 4, and 7 months. They kept asking Dad, you know, when are you going to be mayor, Dad? When are you going to be mayor? Well, here's my shout out that I'd promised to them. Girls, tonight is the night. Finally, we made it. So got to get that shout out in. First off, I want to thank all the guests that are here today or on Zoom or YouTube and in support of our newly elected officials. The peaceful transition of government is a trademark of our great country, and I am truly honored to be here today. I want to thank the voters of Fremont for putting their faith in me as their next mayor. I'm extremely humbled and honored by your support. I also want to congratulate the new council members taking their seats today. Councilman Dev Sukram, Councilwoman Sally Gannum, Councilman Vern Gibson. Thank the senior council members, Councilman Mark Legman, Councilman Mark Jensen, Councilman Brad Yerger, Councilman Glenn Ellis, and Councilman Mike Coons for their continued service to Fremont. I look forward to working with all of you as we help Fremont be the best place to live, work, and raise a family. I cannot start my term without recognizing those men that have come before me, these leaders that have shaped this role as mayor and have laid the groundwork for Fremont and our future. From our first mayor in 1871, Theron Nye, who, like many of our earliest settlers, risked everything and moved west to the Nebraska Territory, found opportunity to homestead right here in Fremont. The sacrifice, work ethic, and ingenuity of these early leaders like Theron Nye and his family continue to be seen in our city's rich history. Tonight, we honor the vision of these founders that paved the way for our city. To our more recent history, Mayor Skip Edwards. He served as mayor from 1988 to 2010. I vaguely remember meeting Skip, but I was always inspired by his patriotism, faith in God, and his absolute love for Fremont. Mayor Skip's strong character and eternal optimism is still a guiding light for our city today. And for the last decade, Mayor Scott Getchman. Under Mayor Getchman's leadership, our community saw a record amount of growth and development. His strong and steady hand and voice guided our city through some of the most turbulent times, including the March 2019 floods and now the coronavirus pandemic. He taught us that whatever we face as a community, we are resilient and we do it together. Mayor Getchman, thank you for 10 years of servant leadership and dedication to Fremont. As it is important to honor our past, today we look towards the future, a future of Fremont that is bright, full of energy, optimism, and enthusiasm. A future not about any one person, but about the power of coming together and putting faith in each other. A future that says there's no limit to what we can accomplish. To the residents of Fremont, you can expect me to give everything I have to serve you and our community. As mayor, I will listen, be open-minded, do this job with integrity and a commitment to excellence. No one puts higher expectations on me than myself, and this work ethic I will bring to this office. I will also bring that positive energy and enthusiasm needed to lead our community into the future. I look forward to representing your spirit, work ethic, and goals. I love Fremont. I am proud to call this my hometown. It was such a pleasure to meet so many of you during the campaign, and I will continue to be inspired by all of your stories. To the members of the City Council, this body, you can expect me to be committed, open-minded, service-focused, and ready to get to work. In the coming months, I look forward to working with you on specific goals and a plan of action for the next 4 years. I expect you all to find ways to come together for the greater good. We are all one team. This is not about us. Though disagreements and civil debate is good, let us remember that we must work to find common ground and help our community forward. And no matter what, we support the decisions made by this body. You always know where I stand. You can always count on me to be willing to communicate and share ideas. I also ask you be willing to extend grace to me when necessary. I tell you, this role as mayor is humbling. I may have to admit my ignorance or ask for help. In the end, I will learn, I will find the answer, and I will always give 100% effort. It is for this reason I recite this verse often: God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. To our over 300 city employees and staff, thank you for your service and commitment to our community. One of my goals as mayor is to get the chance to meet every one of you and thank you for the work you do. Fremont is extremely blessed with a tremendous team of employees. Please know I am always here if you need me. My door is always open. No matter what your job is, you are important and appreciated. What I expect is that you continue to do your jobs with an unwavering commitment to service and integrity, that you hold yourselves and your work to the highest possible standard, that every interaction with our community is important and you can make a difference. My goal as mayor is to grow Fremont together, that years down the road, you can see our thriving community coming together under one common goal with a unity of purpose, that we may live up to our honorable calling to promote life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that our local government exists for the people, by the people, and our representation as mayor and city council may serve you to the highest standard. In the end, we must remember the power of putting faith in each other, believe that the power of prayer and our faith in our Creator will always be our light to direct us. So it is with that and great pleasure that I'll be here today as your next mayor, and I look forward to serving you in the city of Fremont. Okay, moving on to item number 1. Resolution 2020-242 regarding qualifications of Sally Ganem, Dev Sukram, Vern Gibson, and Joey Spellerberg as elected officers. We'll now have a report from city staff.
Mayor and council, the new council members and the mayor have been seated. You can see it in the agenda packet that the certificate from the Dodge County Clerk is attached. I would ask that you take action to approve Resolution 2020-242. Thank you.
Any comments from the public? Any comments from council? I would take a motion in regards to this item. Councilman Legband.
I make a motion to approve Resolution 2020-242.
Councilman Coons.
And I'll second that motion.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
We'll now do the oath of office.
And unless anyone's opposed, I figure we can do all 4 at the same time and have you all recite it back. Okay, so if you'd all please stand. Did you give them a piece? All right. If you'd raise your right hand. I state your name.
I, Joey Spellerberg,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Nebraska,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Nebraska
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear truth, faith, and allegiance to the same,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I take this obligation freely and without mental reservation
that I take this obligation freely and without mental reservation
or for the purpose of evasion,
or for the purpose of evasion.
and that I will faithfully and impartially perform the duties of the office of
I will faithfully and impartially perform the duties of the office of mayor
according to law and to the best of my ability.
according to law and the best of my ability.
And I do further swear that I do not advocate nor am I a member of any political party or organization
And I do further swear that I do not advocate nor am I a member of any political party or organization
that advocates the overthrow of the government of the United States or this state by force or violence.
that advocates the overthrow of the government of the United States or of this state by force or violence.
And that during such time as I am in this position,
And that during such time that I am in this position,
I will not advocate nor become a member of any political party or organization
I will not advocate nor become a member of any political party or organization
that advocates the overthrow of the government of the United States or of this state by force or violence.
that advocates the overthrow of the government of the United States or of this state by force or violence.
So help me God.
So help me God. Moving on to item 2. Motion to adopt current agenda for the December 8th, 2020 regular meeting. Are there any changes to the agenda from staff or council? Seeing none, I would take a motion in regards to this item. Councilman Legband,
I make a motion to adopt the current agenda.
Councilman Jensen,
I will second that.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Moving on to item 3, executive session for attorney-client privilege to discuss pending litigation. Do I have a motion from council to adjourn into executive session? Councilman Jensen,
I move to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing pending litigation and for the further reason that the executive session is necessary to for the protection of the public interest.
Councilman Coons.
And I will second that motion.
A motion has been made and seconded to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing pending litigation and for the further reason that the executive session is necessary for the protection of the public interest. Is there any discussion? The pending motion is to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing pending litigation and for the further reason that the executive session is necessary for the protection of the public interest. Please cast your votes.
The motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
A motion to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing pending litigation and for the further reason that the executive session is necessary for the protection of the public interest has been approved. Discussion will be limited to discussing pending litigation. No official actions or votes will be taken during the executive session. Time is now 7:33, and we will adjourn to the large conference room.
I will make the motion to come out of executive session.
Second, Councilman Legman,
I will second that.
cast your votes.
The motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Moving on to the consent agenda. All items in the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the city council when will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a council member or citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Is there any items by council, staff, or the public to be removed from the consent agenda for further discussion? Councilman Jensen.
Yeah, I'd like to remove item 9 of Riley McCoy and Brian Carpenter here just so we can recognize them.
Any other items? Councilman Yerger.
Yes, I have some questions on item 8, 11, and 16, please.
Any other items? I would take a motion to approve consent agenda items 4 through 7, 10, 12 through 15, 17 through 21. Councilman Legman.
Yeah, I make a motion to approve 4 through 7, 10, 12 through 15, 17 through 21 in consent agenda.
Thank you, Councilman Jensen.
I will second that.
Cast your votes.
The motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item number 8. Resolution 2020-245, certifying city clerk and finance director or designee to deposit city funds and authorize checks on behalf of the city of Fremont in designated banks. This time we'll have staff report.
Good evening, Jody Sanders, Director of Finance for the city. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. This resolution is frankly boilerplate. What all we're doing is certifying for the banks themselves who will be authorized to sign checks on behalf of the city in various bank accounts. I visited with a bank, First National, that has the most checking accounts that we have the most checking accounts with, and they were fine with the resolution as it's worded, and it's the same that it's been worded for the last 12 years that I know of.
Any questions for Jody? Councilman Coons. Oh, no, okay. Councilman Yerger.
Yes, I asked for discussion on this item. I did have discussion with the finance director during the course of the day. I'd like to submit for council's reference the following document and have it received into the record.
I would take, once we get these passed out, a motion to receive. All right, Councilman Yerger.
Yes, I'd make a motion to receive.
Do I have a second? Councilman Jensen.
I will second.
Cast your votes. Hold on. Go ahead, Councilman Legman.
So I'm going to vote no because I have no idea what this is all about.
Okay, I got a motion and a second, so, is there any other comments from council at this point? Councilman Coons?
Yeah, I'll just make a comment. Once again, we get new material that's just given to us at the last moment. With today's technology, I'm wondering why that happens. You know, I check my emails several times a day. You know, my phones. Why am I getting this now?
Councilman Yerger, do you just want to go over this?
Well, I think we need to vote on the motion to receive. I'm happy to comment for those that believe that they needed to have advance notice for discussion purposes this evening, because typically we can make amendments to resolutions on the fly. I wrote it down so that it would be clear and everybody could have it in front of them rather than to try to amend the resolution on the fly. And new council members didn't even have access to emails. So even though I would have tried to send it out, only half the council would have gotten them. So I think it's appropriate for us to discuss it tonight. If you don't want to receive the document, I'll introduce the adjustment to the resolution manually without giving the document that you can read from, whichever way.
Any other comments from council? We do have a motion and a second to receive. If there's no other comments, let's cast your votes to receive.
Motion carries 5-3.
All right, go ahead, Councilman Yerger.
Okay, I agree with the position that the finance director has taken with regards to this has been going on for some time. I knew that's what was going on here. It's pretty perfunctory, and that's why it's on the consent agenda. But the reason that I called her and the reason that I'm suggesting that this wording should be modified in the way that I have suggested is that if you'll notice in the staff report, the primary signatures on the governmental side are the finance director and the clerk, city clerk. And on the utility side, it's the finance director and the assistant city administrator utilities. And the mayor and the city administrator are designated as being alternate signers. That is, if one of those other three are not available for signature, then the mayor or the city administrator could sign. I merely asked today in our discussion with the finance director, your resolution doesn't state the same thing. And maybe it hasn't for years, I don't know. But for clarity, the resolution, I think, should say the finance director and the city clerk for governmental funds and the finance director and the assistant city administrator utilities for utility funds, as well as the mayor and the city administrator as alternate signers for both funds can deposit funds or authorize checks on behalf of the city. That's exactly what the staff report says. That's exactly how we operate. That's exactly how the banks have been instructed to allow payment. The expectation in a normal course is they would see one of those three people sign the checks, depending on which side of which bank accounts they are. And occasionally then in points of absence or whatever, they would see the mayor and the city administrator sign checks. This is not any different than what we're doing today. It just sets forth more clearly in the resolution what this council is authorizing to do with regards to deposits and payment by the city. And I, for one, like transparency in that regard. I'm sorry that the council didn't get to see this well in advance, but this came up in late review. We discussed it today with the director of finance, and there was no way to send this to all council members in advance. And for that, I apologize. But I think the language is straightforward and it matches up exactly with what we're attempting to do in the descriptions in the staff report and the same directions that they have at the bank. So I'm just asking that the resolution state the same thing.
Councilman Legman.
Yeah, do we still have Jody on?
Yes.
Have we ever had a problem before? And how do you feel about this new wording?
The wording itself is acceptable, but the bank makes no distinction between primary and secondary signers. The bank signature cards that have more to do with how the signatures are accepted at the bank, the signature cards have 3 or 4 individuals listed on that card, and they see those 3 or 4 signatures equally. They don't differentiate between who's a primary signer or a secondary signer at all. And this, I offered that as part of the staff report just to let you know what our practice was, not necessarily that this is the way it had to be.
Councilman Yerger.
I just would point out in response to the director's comments, the resolution changes that are being proposed here do not distinguish between primary and secondary. It says alternate. And all that means is that there are alternate signers that are recognized by the bank. And that's exactly what the staff report says as well.
Any other questions from council? Any comments from the public? Any additional questions from council? Councilman Yerger.
I would make a motion to approve resolution 2020-245 as amended.
It's not been amended. You'll have to make a motion to amend first.
Yeah, you'd have to make a motion to amend the resolution first.
Motion to amend the language as I handed out for resolution 2020-245.
Councilman Ellis.
I second that.
So we're voting on this as an amendment, correct?
That language.
To resolution 2020-245.
Correct.
Okay. Cast your votes.
Motion fails 3-5.
Moving on to item 9.
Vote on the regular
Vote on it.
resolution.
Okay. We now vote on, take the formal vote for resolution 2020-245. I would take a motion. Councilman Jensen.
I'll make the motion to vote to approve resolution 2020-245.
Councilman Coons.
And I'll second that motion.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-1.
All right, moving on, item 9. Move to appoint Riley McCoy and Brian Carpenter as firefighters per mayor recommendation. I will start. I had a conversation with Scott Getchman on these 2 appointments, and agree with these appointments, and just would like to have someone move, if there's no comments, to appoint Riley McCoy and Brian Carpenter as firefighters for mayor recommendation. Councilman Coons.
I would like to make a motion to appoint my fellow firefighters, Riley McCoy and Brian Carpenter, as firefighters to the city of Fremont.
Councilman Jensen.
And I will second that.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
By chance, are Riley and Brian here? No?
No.
Well, congratulations to them both. Happy to have them on board, and I wish them much success. Moving on to item 11. Resolution 2020-247, authorizing MS4 program support agreement with Felsberg, Holt, and Ulevig, FHU. This time we will have a report from staff.
Dave Godikin, Director of Public Works, City Engineer. This item is for a support agreement with Phillipsburg, Holt, and Ulevig, FHU. It's between them and the City of Fremont for our stormwater program that the city currently has in place. They're helping us coordinate our activities and our efforts with the EPA and with what was formerly known as the Nebraska Department of Environmental Quality, DEQ, which is now the NDEE, Environmental and Energy. This is for their fees, helping us put the program together and continue it on.
Thanks, Dave. Any questions for our Public Works Director? Councilman Jensen?
Sorry, no, I'm
Okay. Councilwoman Ganem? All right. Councilman Yeager, go ahead.
I just had one quick question for staff. In the agreement, I noticed that in task 3 and in task 4, the dates for completion are December 15th. Everything else in the document looks like it's 2021 activity. And I just wanted to be clear that yes, these tasks are going to be done in the next week. Even though they're labeled as task 3 and 4, we're taking these out of order. Those are not incorrect dates. They're correct, and they're going to be completed in a week.
I'm sure those are incorrect dates. They should be coordinated with all the dates are the same. It's laid out to match up with our fiscal year.
So you think the more appropriate dates on task 3 and 4 are sometime in the first quarter of 2021?
No, it'd be the end of 21.
End of 21.
Yes.
You're saying September 30th,
Yes. Yes.
21.
Would you be in agreement to amending the agreement to say September
Yes.
30th
Absolutely.
of 2021 instead of December 15th on both those tasks?
Yes.
I would make such a recommendation in the form of a motion to amend agreement.
Councilman Legman?
Sorry.
I will second that.
Cast your votes on this amendment.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Now I would take a motion to the amended resolution 2020-247 authorizing MS4 program support agreement with Phillipsburg, Holt, and Ulevig FHU. Councilman Yeager.
Make a motion to approve amended resolution 2020-247.
Councilman Gibson.
You're not on. Hit speak. No, hit speak. There you go.
What is Dev on?
Deb, you're on.
Dev. Go ahead, Vern.
got it?
Yep.
I second that.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Moving on to item 16, resolution 2020-250 authorizing the purchase of primary general liability and excess insurance with Everest National Insurance Company, Everest, and Associated Electric and Gas Insurance Services Limited, AEGIS. At this time, we'll have a report from city staff.
This is Jan Rise, Administrative Services Director. And what you have before you is a proposal that was prepared by Aon for securing the general liability and excess liability insurance December 31 of 2020 through December 31 of 2021. Together, the premium total is $145,524, which is a 7.9% increase, which is considerably less than what we have seen in the market for 2020 and 2021 renewals. Aon was the primary broker on negotiating these terms, and we have Gary Wagner with us on the Zoom call here, if you have specific questions regarding coverages and maybe any of the negotiations that took place. Are there any questions? And the budgeted cost is $145,524. Are there any questions?
Councilman Yerger.
Yes, I just had one question, and it really was a follow-up. I know that you and I had talked about this offline some weeks ago, but for those that are new to council and for those that will be looking at potentially additional items related to animal control, I wanted to ask this evening, once again for the record, does the city need to be concerned, or is it specifically covered already? Should the city determine that one of its options is to provide its own animal control through the law enforcement? It is that Chief Elliott's police officers would be doing animal control. And my concern was, is there adequate coverage, definition, et cetera, for the services of animal control, which may be atypical from what we've done in the past? I just want to make sure we don't have any coverage issues now that we're issuing this again. We haven't decided to do that, of course, but it was one of the options that was laid out for council to consider, was for law enforcement to do animal control. So I just would like clarity as to whether this agreement already would cover that.
Okay, Councilmember Yerger, what we had discussed before was what is covered under the general liability coverage terms with the League Association of Risk Management, the insurance pool that we often refer to as LARM. And they actually are responsible for ensuring the city functions. And so what we're bringing today with the general liability and excess liability for the electric and natural gas operations would not be relevant for covering the general city employees. And again, that would be something that we would have to have LARM look at if those services were changed or added to our responsibilities. I really don't think it would be a significant impact, if any. As far as what we have with LARM right now on the general liability, we have 5 million coverage for that. So I really don't see that it would be an issue, but it's a good question. It's a good question to always ask how decisions we make are going to impact our insurance. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Jan? Any comments from the public? Any additional comments from council? I would take a motion in regards to this item. Councilman Yerger.
Make a motion to approve resolution 2020-250.
Councilman Coons.
I will second that motion.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Moving on to unfinished business. Item 22, Resolution 2020-240 to require mask mandate for all per Governor Ricketts DHM and allowing for consideration of being more restrictive, and that regardless of time, any and all patrons and workers shall wear masks in any all places of business, applicable to all aged 3 or older. I will mention in regards to this item, back in our last meeting, the 24th, the council discussed this and brought it to the Board of Health, which had a meeting and then implemented the mask directive that we have right now through January 31st. The Board of Health also convened last Friday and discussed how the directive was working. And it concluded that Fremonders were taking it very seriously and applying the mask directive well. And I will say that I personally have seen our community really step forward and do this, which is appreciated, as well as businesses and those involved. So this resolution was carried further to tonight. I would at this point recommend either we table this or continue it indefinitely at this point, but I would take any comments at this point from council. Councilman Legman.
Yeah, I was going to say the Board of Health met. They recommended no changes. So I would like to make a motion to table this indefinitely.
Councilman Jensen.
I will second that.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Moving on to item 23. Ordinance 5546 pertaining to the sale and conveyance of real estate owned by the city of Fremont, Fremont Technology Park, to McGinn Holdings LLC pursuant to Nebraska law. This would be for second reading, and the applicant is requesting to suspend rules and hold final reading. This time we'll have staff report.
Mayor and City Council, Brian Newton, City Administrator. So the reason this is back on second reading is, remember, this is actually the third time you've considered this, but we failed to read the first reading. And so tonight would be the second reading, and then we're asking to make up for that time and go ahead and waive the third and final reading and move just to final. If you look at the staff report on page 172, I failed to correct the staff reports, although the agreements are correct and the exhibit is correct. But if you notice, it has now been replatted, and he is purchasing lot 6. And so in my staff report, that was the old lots before it was replatted, and that's why it says 1, 2, 11, and 12. And so we now have a new plat that's attached as the exhibit. I think there's also, I think Councilman Yerger pointed out in the agreement itself, I think it still says 3.2 jobs on page 176. And I think you amended that to 3 jobs, I believe, at the last meeting. And so that would need to be amended as well. Other than that, it's the same thing. The applicant is not here, but I know Dave Mitchell, his attorney, is here if there are any questions.
Are there any questions for city staff? Any Councilman Yerger.
Well, I still have leftover questions from the discussion that we had previously, and actually have a couple of new ones. In your staff report, you indicate that this constitutes or would be in some part an LB 840 reimbursement. I'm not sure that I have seen on any of the other purchase agreements or in this one exactly what that statement necessarily means. So at an appropriate time, you might enlighten the council as to what that means. For the record, I still think that there are maybe potential concerns for the buyer here with regards to the type of business he has at this location. It's my belief that municipal code will require at minimum permits, special permits for this because of the type of business, or perhaps zoning. That doesn't necessarily mean he shouldn't buy it. He certainly can buy it. But there may be some hurdles to get over there yet. I raised at the last meeting that this particular sales agreement only reflects 2.6% earnest money when all the other agreements are upwards of between 4 and 5%. So this seems light with regards to earnest money if we're looking for consistency in the agreements. Not sure why we weren't consistent here, because I thought we said we'd like the agreements to be as consistent as possible. With regards to the jobs contribution, it was just stated that it should be 3 jobs. I think the accurate calculation with regards to 31 jobs over the course of 80 acres multiplied times this buyer's acreage that he's purchasing would actually round up to only 2 jobs. And I would think that we would need to recommend or re-amend if we said 3, it really should be 2. So to be consistent with what we've done in the other agreements associated with purchases here. With regards to the most significant issue that I have with this particular sales agreement, and bear in mind, I have no problem with this buyer buying the property. What I have concern about is that this agreement is not comparable to one of the other agreements, and I've had some dialogue with city administrator about how these calculations came about. And in particular, I've been troubled over paragraph 20. And I stated so at the last meeting. Paragraph 20 basically says that this purchaser will have no cost associated with paving, sewers, stormwater, gas or electric associated with these lots. And furthermore, if we don't get the street paved within a certain time frame, the city is going to pay a $100 a day fine. That doesn't appear in anybody else's contract. And after getting some emails from the city administrator as to how we arrived at the overall value of the property, I've been led to believe that it was the original purchase price of $1,629,784 is what the city paid for the property. And to that, estimated improvements were added, half of which were added to the sum in order to create the value used to create the initial cost, which calculates out to about $32,500 or so per lot. But it was stated that that's specifically for enhancements for 29th Street and Lincoln Avenue. And paragraph 20 specifically gives the purchaser of this property exemption from contributing to something that's been built into the price. I'm extremely concerned about that. That's not the case. I think that the infrastructure improvements that should have been added at the original to the original cost is even more troubling to the extent that we, the city, put infrastructure out there originally using LB 840 funds. And it wasn't for 29th Street or Lincoln Street. It was for sewer and water lines to run up to the tech park. So that seems to be something that was there. I know at the last meeting, it was said when I raised some of these questions that, well, you know, the city should pay for all of this. That's just the normal thing. I would say the city is the developer here. And typically developers put in the streets, the sewers, et cetera. They built it into the cost of the lots. And as a owner of this property, I would expect that's what the city should do. So it's my recommendation that this item not be passed to third reading yet until we fix the employee count from 3 down to 2, that we strike paragraph 20 in its entirety because it's conflictory and not inherent in any other agreements. And it doesn't reflect the same earnest money contributions that expected from all other buyers. And then there's one other thing. There's a revenue stamp issue that's laid out in all of the 3 of the other agreements that specifically says that transferred property is not going to be subject to having to pay revenue stamps. That doesn't appear in this particular sales agreement, and I don't understand why all of these properties are the same. So I would encourage us to fix all of those items before this is moved. I don't have any problem moving this on second reading, but I would have a problem moving to third reading if we don't fix those things before we do. And I would make a motion to do those fixes before we move. We can either address the motion immediately or we can address it after other council and public comment.
Can I respond to some of those, please?
Go ahead, Brian.
So in regards to jobs, it's not calculated. We had not calculated jobs on acreage. We initially started out estimating about how many lots were going to be sold in the tech park. And so we came out for the calculation about 2 jobs per lot. And remember, we have a responsibility to get 31 jobs by April of 2022. Since that time, we've got a couple of folks that look like we're going to meet the 31 jobs. But besides that, we went to council when we sold the first lot with 2 jobs. Council lowered that to 1 job per lot. So we're trying to stay consistent with 1 job per lot. That's why we put 2 jobs in Summit. We put 1 job in Weimers. Technically, this is 4 lots. So initially we asked for 4 and you've lowered it to 3. And I think 3 is very comfortable. It really doesn't matter. We've got a buyer that's going to add 40 jobs. And so we don't think that any future purchase agreements will have any job requirements because we'll probably have met it. But until that day comes, we're putting jobs in there. So I would still recommend you leave 3 jobs in there just because it's the best thing they have. As far as paragraph number 20, the cost of the property was $1.6 million. Back in 2013, council approved a pledge of LB 840 funds and $1.6 million for engineering and infrastructure. Some of that money was spent to put water and sewer up Lincoln. The rest of it has yet to be done. And so in my estimate for that $34,005, we have estimated cost to finish putting water and sewer and the paving on 29th Street and Lincoln. And so, yes, the city is the developer, and yes, the cost of the paving, the cost of the sewer, the cost of the water is in that price, just as any other developer sells a lot, they put those embedded costs in the price. That's our cost in that price. The refund of $12,190, that's the $975,000 that we got from the state for a grant. We divide that by 80 acres. That's about 12,000 some per acre. That's how we arrived at that. And so once the grant's paid back, then we're no longer going to be refunding because the property will be $975,000 less because the grant didn't have to be paid back. So I would not suggest that we do anything with paragraph 20. That's the reason they're not responsible for paving 29th Street. The city is. We will do that. That's part of the infrastructure cost. It's also part of the cost that the council approved in 2013. And these are how these developments are done. This starts out with Nelson Business Park. That was the first property the city owned. We developed that. We sold that property to Eagle Distributing. We sold it to Fremont Contract Carrier. And we just completed the last sale to Del Peterson Associates. We put the streets in, we put the water in, we put the sewer in. We did that. We're the developer. We then purchased property along Morningside. We put water and sewer was along Morningside. We made the other improvements. We sold those lots as improved. Now with the tech park, initially it was purchased for a tech building, some data center. Well, once we realized that it was too small for that, we started subdividing it. And yes, we did put improvements in there just as council approved us to do. And so all improvements get paid out of LB 840. And as we sell lots, all those receipts go back into the LB 840. The goal was hopefully to break even. However, the voters made it really clear in 2014 when they passed the LB 840 is they want the city to develop property to make sure we stimulate job growth. And so is it a requirement that we break even? No, it's not. What the requirement is we use LB 840 to stimulate jobs. And that's exactly what we're trying to do in the tech park is stimulate jobs.
I would, why don't we go ahead and hear from, we have the applicant's attorney on this. Okay, go ahead.
David Mitchell, attorney from McGinn Holdings. I'd add just a few things to what Brian said. And actually, with Nelson Business Park, Bruce Nelson was actually the developer. But in order for that development to come to fruition, he needed to sell another piece, which ultimately Jack Holdings, which was Fremont Contract Carriers, they came to the table, and the city of Fremont came to the table to own an individual lot. But part of that entire process was to make sure we had all the infrastructure in before any shovels hit the dirt on any of those properties. And in this case, I completely agree with Brian that this was a negotiated price. And when the price is negotiated, the question asked was, are there going to be special assessments? In which event the purchase price might be less in order to take into account the special assessments. But here those costs were all rolled into the purchase price. And that's why we have that the paragraph 20, or that's why we have the purchase price the way it is. And paragraph 20 is really to deal with the discussions we're actually having. Before Seth would purchase the property, he wants to make sure the city is in fact committed to finishing the development as any other development would be prior to selling lots. We understand that the infrastructure will most likely be completed before July. And so we said, why don't we give you till September? because in the meantime, Seth intends to have his project rolling. And so that way he knows while he's rolling with his project and his lender is providing financing to a development that doesn't yet have streets in it, that the streets are in fact going to be built. And so taking paragraph 20 out in this case would be a showstopper. As far as our due diligence is concerned, I've spoken as recently as tonight with Jennifer Dam. She feels that Mr. McGinn's use of this property is permitted limited use, that the street is going to be a collector, and that we're probably not going to have any problems whatsoever with respect to this project. However, as I stated last meeting, that's why we have a 120-day due diligence period. We want to get the property under contract, just like the example I gave you with John Larson, where he essentially put a cornfield under contract in a floodplain. Well, we've gone from a property in a cornfield in a floodplain now to property that has been zoned for commercial use following the amendment to the land use map and the zoning ordinance. And now we're moving ahead with closing on that property, hopefully this week, if not next. And then we'll start moving ahead with the development of that site. In this case, assuming we get all of our due diligence done and we've got the green light, Seth will close on this property and you'll see a building going up at some point in time. As far as the 2 jobs versus the 3, I appreciate the additional information on that. I just leave that up to your judgment. Seth is happy with these terms. And so whether you stay at 3 or 2, that will be left up to you folks. And so I think I've addressed really all the issues. If there are none or any that I have overlooked, I'll be happy to address them now.
So I forgot on the bottom part of section 20, it talks about the $100 per day fine if the job's not done. When we do contracts, we put $200 a day fine. So when we bid this out, we will make sure that the contractor is done by September, or else they'll be incurring a $200 a day fee. And so the $100 is fully acceptable to the city.
Councilman Ellis.
This is a question really towards legal. We're about ready to sign a contract here that's very similar to 3 others that we've signed here in the past. Is this setting us up for potential litigation because this contract is different and has section 20 in it that the other ones don't? And from there, those allow those people to come back and say, hey, how come I didn't get this in my contract? And so are we setting ourselves up for potential litigation?
No, this wouldn't be a case of disparate treatment. This is just a case of negotiated contracts.
Councilman Yerger.
Is the applicant taking questions?
Yes.
Usually we don't from the public. I just.
Yes, you can take questions.
So I'd like your interpretation of paragraph 20. The sentence that says the installation of the new infrastructure shall be at the city's cost and none of the subject property shall be subject to any form, tax, special assessment, or other charge associated with the improvement of the cost of this new infrastructure. And the city administrator, and I think you have just indicated, this new infrastructure is the 29th Street and the sewer and water, gas and electric, et cetera,
Right.
which Mr. Newton has indicated was built into the sales price of the $32,500 a lot. So how do I have assurance that that sentence there does not give you immunity from paying the portion of cost that was built into the $32,500? It says the purchaser is not going to pay for infrastructure.
I think that's a strained interpretation of this agreement. The purpose of that clause is to make sure that we don't get dinged after the fact with additional special assessments. And I'll tell you on record right now, for my client to pay $32,000 an acre and the streets go in and then he does a backwards calculation and sends the city a bill for that would be specious at best and in total bad faith. The purpose of that clause is to make sure that we don't get any fees associated or upcharges in addition to the purchase price relative to those items. And that's exactly what that paragraph says.
you're aware that none of the other subdivision agreements, including the Birds, who are already operational on Lincoln Avenue, had no such coverage in their agreement whatsoever.
Well,
And they're still waiting for city to pave Lincoln Street.
Well, I didn't negotiate their contract. I can tell you that since you're dealing with a potentially much larger facility here and a sophisticated client, he wanted assurance in this document that that wasn't going to happen. With the Weimer contract that you'll be looking at next, Dale wanted to, and Jody rather, wanted to err on the side of making sure their contract was no better than anybody else's for obvious reasons. And in fact, if you look at the down payment they're making for their property versus the Birds, are actually paying a proportionally higher one. I've asked them about this particular provision that I put into Seth's document. They declined to have it put in there. Summit, I do legal work for Summit, but they have not sought my counsel on this contract, so I wasn't involved in that. So
And
different contracts, same subject matter. In my client's case, it's important to have those roads in. And the fact that we're discussing it at length like this makes me glad that I did, because I don't want to have to come back here again and go through this exercise. Everyone knows what their obligations are.
Right. And I've been asking questions purposely, not just for the public in general,
Yeah.
but on behalf of your client as well, hopefully. That's my goal. And I have this issue that has been stated tonight, and I think it's probably your assumption as well, that 29th Street is a collector street. I was told by the city engineer that Yeager is a collector street. 29th Street does not exist. Therefore, it is not on the maps that are used by the city to determine what is a collector street. This sale is going through before that is ever going to get, and probably I can't see how it should get a collector street, because it's not going to collect any other streets between Yeager and Lincoln. It's just going to pick up traffic from the lots that are sold. It's not going to pick up city traffic off of other streets, because there aren't any. So the characterization that somehow that's going to be a collector street in the context of normal collector street jargon with regards to what we have on the city maps that Mr. Godekin was showing me, I don't see how that qualifies, which means that your client would have to put access on Yeager unless this does get classified as collector. And I don't see how it does that. And it doesn't have it today because it is not on the map as a street. And Dave said, we're working from the map we have. It's built on what we know today. Well, that street doesn't exist today. So it can't be characterized as a collector yet because it doesn't exist. And I'm concerned about that because the statements that you got from the planning director and the statements that I've been getting from the city engineer regarding to where will your client have to put access seem to be at odds. And that troubles me. I would hope that your client would want resolution of that for certain. If that makes a difference to his design of how he would lay out his property.
And so my question is, what do you think this 120-day due diligence paragraph says? That's exactly what we're doing. Well,
that's fine. If you're comfortable with it, I'm fine. I'm fine.
Let me finish. That's exactly what we're doing.
I am not fine with your explanation of the infrastructure shall not be paid for.
Yeah.
Can I speak and answer the question? Again, just like in most developments, we give the parties are given a certain amount of time for due diligence. When we developed Yeager Place, where Buffalo Wild Wings and the medical clinic are, we had 3 different parcels. We had 3 different types of contracts, which were dramatically different in the end. But every developer wanted anywhere up to 6 months of due diligence in order to get all of these things worked out, from covenants to zoning to access to economic incentives. That's just what we do after we sign the contract. And once we get through that 120-day period, we will know whether or not this site is going to work. Or if we think it's going to work, but we need more time, we may come back to you for additional time so we can get those things worked out. But in this particular case, just like many sites where all you have is dirt, you have to start somewhere. And so we start with the contract, and then we work together as a partnership to try to get this done. This property, this 80 acres is sat vacant for, has it been 10 years?
10 years.
And I would hope you'd be doing cartwheels as you're getting people now lined up to buy the property and not look for, provides, a solution looking for a problem, but rather see what our true problems are. And if it's not labeled as a collector yet, and you're going to have other users in there, I talked with the planning director tonight. Obviously, we're going to have more discussions on this issue after we get the contract signed, but I would hope we would work together on a path to success on this, and not one fraught with roadblocks. I appreciate your concern for our client, but that's my work to do in the next 120 or more days to get this site ready, so that this deal ready, so that he can close on it, and we can keep a true Fremont success story in Fremont.
Yeah, I would just echo, we have sat on this ground for 10 years with no economic development. And now we have 3 items right now, that 3 businesses looking to expand. And, they're not going to come into a situation where, infrastructure isn't there, and it has to be a good situation for them. They're bringing in this applicant. I know there was backup, is a Fremont success story, no doubt about it. I appreciate the looking into the details of, like the applicant's attorney said. I mean, we're going to do the due diligence with the city after. They need to get moving on this. Time is money for these companies that are looking at this ground to expand. And we've gone through first reading on this specific item already. And so, I don't think it's unreasonable at this point to, have second reading and move to final reading based off of the prior discussion and where we're at this point, looking to the future, that they will, come together in these 120 days and move forward on this. That's where I stand at this point. See, there's more requests to speak. Councilman Legman.
I just would like legal to opine on that middle section of paragraph 20.
Yeah, Councilmember Yerger, you've already used your 2 times.
Over 5. I feel very confident in our legal team, their legal team, our city staff, who's done this millions of times before, knows all the obstacles, not fabricated obstacles. I am very comfortable with this. It's time to move on. If everyone else is done, I'd like to make a motion to pass ordinance 5546. I'm sorry, hold second reading to ordinance 5546.
What's your point?
I had a motion on the floor. I said it was the goal, taking a vote on it earlier on, and made several recommendations for modifications, including lowering the employee count from 3 to 2. And those items really should be attended to. You knew there was a motion on the floor.
Well, I don't know if there was a second to the motion or if the motion was affirmatively made, but okay. Mayor, I don't see a problem with continuing with Councilmember Legman's motion.
We'll continue with Councilman Legman's motion. Is there a second? Councilman Jensen.
I will second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-1.
We'll now have second reading.
An ordinance pertaining to the sale and conveyance of real estate owned by the city of Fremont, Nebraska to McGinn Holdings LLC pursuant to Nebraska law on second reading.
Now, do I have a motion to suspend the rules and hold final reading of ordinance 5546? Councilman Jensen.
I will make the motion to suspend rules and hold third and final reading.
Councilman Coons.
And I'm glad to second that motion.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-1, Mayor.
Now have final reading.
An ordinance pertaining to the sale and conveyance of real estate owned by the city of Fremont, Nebraska to McGinn Holdings LLC pursuant to Nebraska law on final reading.
Cast your votes. Final vote.
Motion carries 7-1.
Moving on, item 24, ordinance 5547 pertaining to the sale and conveyance of real estate owned by the city of Fremont and the Fremont Technology Park to Jody Weimer pursuant to Nebraska law. This will be for second reading. Report from city staff.
Again, Brian Newton, City Administrator. In your packet, you'll see that we have a plat. They propose to buy Lot 4. I don't believe there's any changes to this purchase agreement. I think I got all the changes in this one. They're guaranteeing one job. And the costs were amended as Councilman Yeager pointed out last time. So with that, I'll take any questions. They're not asking to waive anything. They have the time. And so this would be, tonight would be second reading.
Any questions for staff? Any comments from the public?
I guess David Mitchell, attorney for Jody Weimer. The only thing I might add to this is if everyone is in favor of this agreement, in order to avoid another appearance, if the council would be inclined to suspend the rules and move to third reading on this one, I'd ask you to consider that. Otherwise, we appreciate you moving it forward.
Any questions for the applicant? Any comments from council? Councilman Legband.
Yes, I think I have one for legal. Since it's not on the agenda, can we do that?
The purpose of holding the 3 readings is to have public comment, and since there's already been public comment on the matter, I don't see an issue with that.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional comments from council? Councilman Jensen.
If there's no additional comments, I'll just make the motion to approve the second reading of ordinance 5547.
Councilman Coons.
And I'll second that motion.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
We'll now have second reading.
An ordinance pertaining to the sale and conveyance of real estate owned by the city of Fremont, Nebraska to Jody Weimer pursuant to Nebraska law on second reading.
There's now been a request by the applicant to suspend the rules and hold final reading. I would take a motion in that regard. Councilman Coons.
Yes, I'd like to make a request to suspend rules and hold final reading.
Councilman Sukram.
I'll second that.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-1, Mayor.
We'll now have final reading.
An ordinance pertaining to the sale and conveyance of real estate owned by the city of Fremont, Nebraska to Jody Weimer pursuant to Nebraska law on final reading.
Cast your final vote for this ordinance, please.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Moving on, item 25, ordinance 5548 pertaining to the sale and conveyance of real estate owned by the city of Fremont and the Fremont Technology Park to Summit Medical Staffing LLC pursuant to Nebraska law. This will also be for second reading. An applicant is requesting to suspend rules and hold final reading. At this time, we'll have staff report.
Mayor and City Council, Brian Newton, City Administrator. This is a proposal. They would like to purchase Lot 2, which you can see was a combined lot. They actually are combining to buy 2 lots there. They're building a larger building. They do want to request that the rules be suspended. They move to final reading. They're in a hurry to get going. This is the applicant that proposes to add 40 plus jobs, and will be coming back shortly with an LB 40. You've given them one LB 840, but they're going to be coming back for an additional amount to help them expand their business. And so I'll take any questions.
Any questions for City Administrator? Any comments from the public? Any comments from council? Councilman Yerger.
I would make a motion to change the contributed jobs reflected in the agreement from 2 employees to 1, based on the calculations that were actually used to determine the bird calculation when we changed to 1. It was not a per acre, or excuse me, a per lot. It was a per acre calculation. Certainly the calculations done to make the adjustment to the Weimer, when we changed theirs from 0.8 to 1, were based on calculations that were on a per acre rounded up calculation. I know that to be the fact because I made that motion and that's how they were calculated. I would like to see this one changed from 2 employees to 1. It's probably perfunctory. If they're going to bring 40 jobs, it won't matter. But for consistency of calculation and transparency, I think we need to change their calculation or contribution from 2 employees to 1, and I make that recommendation.
Legal, do we have any issue with that?
Nope, and that sounded like a motion to me, so.
Again, the reason it was 2 is because we combined 2 lots. There was 1 job per lot, so that's the reason 2.
Any comments from council? Councilman Ellis.
Councilman Yerger, is you're requesting you to go to 1? Were you under the assumption it was 1 lot, or they're actually purchasing 2 lots?
To me, the number of lots is irrelevant. We've never taken a 31 jobs and divided it by the number of lots available in this subdivision. I don't know what that is, how many lots there are, but it's certainly going to give you a far different number than we've been assigning to these sales so far. When we adjusted the bird calculation and when we adjusted the Weimer calculation, it was employees per acre times the number of acres being purchased. If you follow that logic and mathematics through, you will have perfection relative to the number of employees that are necessary in 80 acres. And that's what we have. And we've adjusted several others now for that same purpose. I suggested we adjust it for the McGinn purchase as well. We didn't do it, but for consistency's sake, I believe that Summit should only be obligated to 1 job based on the acreage. And that was my motion.
I would say for consistency's sake, I will second that motion.
So just to be clear, this would be an amendment to this ordinance to take it from 2 jobs requirement to 1. Is that correct?
It's amending that purchase agreement.
Amending the purchase.
Just the purchase agreement, yeah.
Okay. Cast your votes.
Missing somebody.
The motion carries 5-3.
Now I would take a motion to the amended ordinance 5548. Councilman Yerger.
Yes, I would make a motion to approve the amended ordinance 5548.
Councilman Legman.
I'll second it.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Now I would take a motion to hold second reading.
I think that
That was second reading?
No, you just have to hold
And
it.
so now I need to
You read it.
on second reading.
Okay.
An ordinance pertaining to the sale and conveyance of real estate owned by the city of Fremont, Nebraska to Summit Medical Staffing LLC pursuant to Nebraska law on second reading.
Now the applicant is requesting to suspend rules and hold final reading. I would take a motion in that regard. Councilman Coons.
Yeah, I'd like to suspend the rules and hold final reading.
Councilman Legman.
I'll second that.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-1, Mayor.
We'll now have final reading.
An ordinance pertaining to the sale and conveyance of real estate owned by the city of Fremont, Nebraska to Summit Medical Staffing LLC pursuant to Nebraska law on final reading.
Please cast your final vote on this ordinance.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Time is now 9:30. We'll take a 10-minute break. Thank you, Mark.
Oh, yeah, I don't know why. How's he doing? Yeah, I probably. Well, I guess it's happened. I'd like to be in touch.
No, that's what I'm getting ready to go.
Yeah.
Get us back up to staff. Get us back up to staff.
Yeah.
election of president of city council. Nomination is received from council. No motion necessary to nominate. At this time, I would take any nominations for council president from the council. Councilman Yerger.
Yes, I would like to nominate Glenn Ellis. And I would also like to request that the council vote by ballot on this matter, and that we only take a vote after all nominations have ceased. That is, if there are multiple nominations, we should consider them all and vote accordingly so as to eliminate as we go down the line. For example, if there's 3 nominations, you vote for 2. 1 is out, 2 are in, and then you vote again, and whoever wins, wins. I think that's the appropriate way. I would ask that we do that. I realize other council members may feel differently, but I do nominate Glenn Ellis for the position.
Is there any other nominations? Councilman Coons.
Yeah, I would like to nominate Councilman Mark Legman.
Any other nominations? We have nominations of Councilman Glenn Ellis and Councilman Mark Legband. Tyler, you want to go ahead and pass out the ballots, please?
Tyler and Travis can count the ballots. Just go collect them. Just walk in front and collect them.
Are we using what type of voting machine?
No voting machine. We're using JCOT voting machine.
Tyler, please read the votes.
No, actually, they
Is
just
it-
read them, and then the majority is, by state law, you have to report the final count.
Gotcha.
And it takes 5, obviously.
Looks like we have 6 votes for Mark Legband and 2 votes for Glenn Ellis.
All right. Congratulations, Mark. Moving on to item 27. Is there anything else we need to do at this point, legal, or we're good? Item 27, motion to approve annual payment for Chris Kobach for professional legal services. At this time, we'll have a staff report.
Mayor, City Council, this is our annual contract that we renew with Mr. Kobach. Per our agreement, he will represent us if there should be any litigation against us in the immigration ordinance. So I would recommend that we go ahead and renew this again.
Any questions for staff? Any comments from the public? Any comments from council? Councilman Yerger.
If there are no comments from council, I'd make a motion that we approve the payment to Chris Kobach.
Councilman Jensen.
I do have comments here.
Okay.
Just to kind of give an overview, maybe some of the public and even some of the new council don't know, Chris Kobach is, he was 31st Secretary of State of Kansas. And he's been given $10,000 a year of Fremont City money to represent us. He was the one that crafted the language for the for ordinance 5165, the immigration ordinance. He's a politician from Kansas. He's run a gubernatorial race. He's run a Senate race. In June of this year, he sent letters to all the states asking for publicly available voter data, names, addresses, voting histories, party affiliation, felony convictions, the last 4 digits of your social security number in every state. So I can't imagine this ordinance, I can't imagine the ACLU being afraid of him. We're throwing more money at him. We've already spent at least 90, maybe $100,000 we've given to this man. And I can't look my constituents in the eye and do it again. I will vote against this, and I urge everybody else to do the same.
Any other comments from council? There is a motion on the floor. I would take a second. Is there a second? Councilman Sukram.
We'll second that.
Has been seconded. Cast your votes.
The motion carries 5-3.
Moving on, item 28, move to receive October 2020 Traffic Committee report. This time we'll have staff report.
No, just tap the button up there, Dave. Up, no, up on the mic. Dave,
I got it.
No, the mic up above. Just tap that little red thing in the front. No, we're in the front, There you go. There you go.
Dave Godigan, Director of Public Works, City Engineer. This item is the traffic committee report from October 2020. We had quite a few items on this agenda, but part of that was because the items from September got pushed back into the October meeting, and so it's a combination of the two. To go into the report, the traffic committee, I should back up a little bit because we have some new members here tonight. The traffic committee is made up of myself, Public Works Director, City Engineer, Police Chief, the Street Superintendent, and the City Civil Engineer. We meet monthly. We receive complaints from the public or concerns from other staff, Police Department, Fire Department, ones that we find ourselves around town pertaining to signs, speeding, anything basically dealing with roadways and traffic. So we meet monthly and we go over those items, make recommendations. The committee report goes to the UIB, UIB, and then to City Council where it is tonight. So going into the report, item number 1, we had a concern from a neighbor on 9th Street between Ridge Road and Davenport Avenue regarding excessive speed. There are a number of these on this agenda tonight of excessive speed. They're somewhat difficult to make recommendations on, and you're going to see quite a few of these say recommend further study and consider it at a further future meeting. One of the issues that we have is how do we determine what excessive speed is on streets? This particular street is a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit zone, but without some way of monitoring actual speeds, it's difficult to say how fast people are going, and then you have to be there while they're doing it. One of the ways we monitor that is with the traffic counters that we have. Not only do they count traffic, do they count types of traffic, trucks, cars, etc., but they also track speed. However, the one downfall they have is their rubber tubes, similar to what we used to have at gas stations back in the past. And those rubber tubes this time of year, partly they freeze up, but also partly if you get a snowstorm and the snowplows come by, that's usually the end of your rubber tube. So they're only warm weather methods. We are looking at purchasing some equipment that uses radar technology, but we don't have that at the present time. So item number 1 again is 9th Street between Ridge Road and Davenport Avenue and Ed Earl Lane. We had a concerned neighbor saying that there's excessive speed on some of the cars out there. So in this particular case, the police department will monitor, my own staff. When we're in the area, we will monitor it as well. And then we'll take it back up at a future meeting. Item number 2 was a request for stop signs on the spur railroad tracks located on South Union in the vicinity of Washington Avenue. This is not the main line Burlington or the main line UP. There is a spur line that goes to the businesses that are south and west of that location. At the present time, there's a crossbuck sign, the cross sign that says railroad crossing, and below that is a yield sign. The state a number of years ago passed a statute that said all railroad crossings would be signed with the crossbuck sign, but also with either a yield or a stop sign. In this particular case, there's a yield sign. The request was for a stop sign. The committee looked at that, and the committee is recommending that the yield signs remain in place and no further action be taken on that request. The third item was for a parallel parking stall to be constructed on the southwest corner of Military Street and Main Street. At the present, in this parking stall would be on the eastbound lane of Military. Presently, there is no parking allowed there, and there's no parking stall there. The travel lane, that's the 2-lane westbound traffic, is all that's there. There's no pullover lane for parking. A pullover lane would have to be built. And because of the proximity of utilities and everything else and some trees that are in there, if it were built, you'd probably get about enough space for 1 car in there. The traffic committee is recommending denial of this request and that no further action be taken. And then it also brings a question up as who would pay for all that construction as well. Item number 4 was a request for no Midland, specifically parking sign on the north side of 9th Street between Lincoln Avenue and Garfield Street. Presently, there's parking allowed on both sides of 9th Street in that vicinity. The apartment complex that sits in that area is predominantly Midland students, and one of the residents along there was requesting that a sign be put up that no parking for Midland students essentially could park there. Committee is recommending denial of this as well because I'm not sure how that's even legal to segment out one portion of the population for no parking. It'd either be no parking or allowed as it is today. We're recommending no further action. Item 5 is again a neighbor request for excessive speeds on the unpaved roads in the vicinity of 2nd and Crosby Streets. And that's kind of that little gravel paved or gravel street area near, what is that? Pierce Street and South Street. And then kind of north of that up to the railroad tracks. There's, 4 or 5 streets, north and south, east and west in that area. And the request was that there's excessive speed in that area. And again, the committee recommends further study on that and bring it back at a further future meeting. Again, we would monitor it ourselves and then the police department as well. And this is one where gravel streets don't work well with our traffic counters either because you need a firm base underneath that rubber hose for you to get a really good count. So I'm not sure even in the summer how good we would do with our traffic counters that we have. The next item was a request for no truck through traffic on Treat Street and Thompson Street between Union and Schneider. These two are gravel streets between Union and Schneider. It's partially residential, partially commercial in that area. There's industrial in that area. So there are quite a few trucks using this area for the adjacent businesses in that area. A resident on that street requested that the city put up no truck traffic signs on Treat Street and Thompson Street between Union and Schneider. To do this would require approval of a resolution, which is also attached to this agenda item for us to put the signs up. These streets are not truck routes. Union Street is a truck route. Schneider Street is a truck route. They're kind of being used as a cut through, I guess you could say, by trucks in the neighborhood. But I would also add that there are businesses on these streets that have truck traffic. And the way our code is and the way state law is you can drive on non-designated truck routes if you're going from one truck route by the most direct route to another truck route. But the committee is still recommending that these signs be placed to dissuade, I guess, trucks from going through there that are just using it as a cutoff, because they can go around and get into the abutting area on a truck route, which is what they're supposed to do. If there's no truck route method that you can get there, you can shortcut through. But in this case, they can go around on a truck route to get over to Schneider Street or to Union, depending on which way they're coming from. The next item is excessive speeds on Churchill Drive between Oxford and Buckingham Road. This is in the Cambridge Square residential subdivision. It's a subdivision where there's one street into that area, and the concern was from the neighbor that there is some speeding on that particular street. Again, this is one that the committee is recommending further study and to reconsider it at a future meeting. Item 8 is excessive speeds on Downing Street between 1st and 5th. Again, this is one that the committee is recommending for further study and consider at a future meeting. Item 9 was a request from the street superintendent for no parking signs to be put up on West 23rd Street east of Rademacher's Way. This is a dead-end street that kind of dead ends into kind of what is the airport property. There's a vacant lot on the south of this street, and to the north of this street is the airport. There's a local business there that's parking semi-trailers on that segment of street, and it makes it hard for the street department to do maintenance on that street, particularly in the winter when there are truck trailers parked there. And the superintendent is requesting that we put no parking signs there to discourage that use. This item would also require approval by resolution of the city council, which is also in this item's packet. Item 10 is kind of an open-ended item. The committee was requested to look at vacating half of 5th Street between Main and Park Street from Main Street to the alley. You have the 505 building there, and I'm not sure what the building is or what the business is across the street, but the request has been that the city turn that into a one-lane street so that we could do some, I guess you'd say, outdoor dining and that type of thing in that area, and to try to do it to stay ADA compliant, to keep a sidewalk, to accommodate outdoor dining is very, very difficult with the 2-lane plus parking that's in there now. And if that were reduced down to a 1-lane, and it's a one-way street also, I would add, to reduce that down to a 1-lane opens up much more area on either side. And the committee, although in support of looking at actions like this, but we do realize that there is also quite a few like right-of-way requirements, easement requirements, et cetera, that need to go along with this. But the committee is agreeable that we could make that work from a traffic standpoint to accommodate this. Not necessarily recommending that one thing or another be done with the street. We're just recommending that it would work on a traffic standpoint. And that's the end of my traffic report.
Any questions for staff? Councilman Coons.
Yeah, Dave, on item number 6, with the no traffic signs, says, however, if they're using to access nearest truck route or business located on that street, I think we also need to have a little bit of clarification on the fact that there are other trucks that would be using deliveries, pickups or deliveries to residents on that street.
Yes.
For instance, like garbage trucks, concrete trucks.
Mm-hmm.
Those.
Yes.
I think that, I don't know if it needs to be added to that but at least recognition, because I know there's a lot of confusion from the public when they see a truck driving on a no truck posted street, and they're not quite grasping the difference between through traffic and then local deliveries.
Yeah, between speeding down the streets and stop signs, this is probably one of the more frequent requests that I get is, why are these trucks driving down my street? And just because there's a truck there doesn't mean that they're not there for a purpose. Like I said, there are businesses along the street that use trucks, and you are well within your legal rights to access your property or have deliveries made to your property by trucks, even if it's not a truck route. It's just that the truck has to use the closest truck route to access your property. If I hope that makes sense. Using it as a cut through is probably does not meet that definition, but using it as a delivery to someone who lives there or a business that's there, or that business accessing with their own trucks, is well within their rights.
Councilman Yerger.
Just to follow up on Councilman Kuhn's concern or question, to answer his question, instead of it saying no truck traffic, could it say no through truck traffic?
It could say that, yes.
I don't know if that would get to your point, Councilman Kuhn's. My other question really was one that items 6, 9, and 10 then are things that you assessed, but all are indicated that they need to go through city council for something. And so even though they're not part of the resolution here, those that requested that of the traffic committee are being notified that their next step is to go from the traffic committee to bring these issues before council or the planning director for resolution.
Well,
how does that work?
The resolutions are in this package for the signs.
For the signs. No, I'm talking about both of those said under item 6, this action will require resolution by the city council. You're talking about this resolution?
There should be 2 resolutions in your packet. That covers the signs.
So the one on 5th Street, for example, that one's different because it requires unique action by city council. That's different.
Yes. Yeah, that like I say, that's a very unique situation. And that will be, I guess, something that the council will have to consider.
So we're not directing them here. You're not directing them.
We considered it as a committee. We're making the recommendation only that, yes, it will work, but there is a lot of legal documents that need to be prepared before it can become an action. And that's not happening tonight.
But it puts the ball back in their court. It's not the ball in the council's court. It's no longer in the traffic committee's report.
Correct.
That's my point. It's back on those that apply.
They would have to submit a plan, and then we review that plan. And then that plan most likely will go to city council. Well, it'll go to planning commission and then city council.
They would turn a plan in again to the traffic committee for initial review, and then it would come to council?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we would handle it that way.
Any other questions for staff? Any comments from the public?
Can I make one comment?
Go ahead.
Because we do have some new council members tonight and new mayor, for your edification. Anytime we put up a regulatory sign, which is a speed limit sign, yield sign, stop sign, truck traffic sign, no parking signs, basically anything that they write a ticket for, there has to be action by council. Now, speeding is a little different because speed limits are set by city code, so that's an ordinance, but all the others have to be set by resolution or approved by resolution. So that's why there's resolutions for the regulatory signs that we're talking about tonight.
Thank you. Any public comment? Any comments from council? Councilman Yerger.
In response to Councilman Kuhn's concern, which I share, I think it might be appropriate to amend the resolution to say, rather than no truck traffic, no through truck traffic. And I would make that motion.
Since we're receiving, we can amend, right? Okay. Councilman Coons.
And I'll second that motion.
Cast your votes on the amendment.
One moment. Motion carries 8-0.
And then Mayor, we could do a motion to receive the report and then do an individual motion on each resolution.
Okay.
What's it? There's no report?
Dave, do you receive the report? You don't have to. We just need to act on these two, right? We don't necessarily need to receive the report in a record.
That's just how we've always done it. The traffic report is in there.
It's in there.
If you don't need to, then I would bow to what legal recommendation is.
We don't need to receive it, but we do need to act individually on the two resolutions.
Okay. We can move on to 2020-255.
No, you got a motion to amend. Now you need to.
So we need to, okay, now we need a motion to the amended traffic committee report. Resolution 2020-249. Councilman Yerger.
I would make a motion to approve amended resolution 2020-249.
Councilman Legman.
I'll second that.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Now moving on to resolution 2020-255. To place no parking signs north and south sides of 23rd Street between Raidmakers Way and the end of the street. I would take a motion in regards to this resolution. Councilman Legman.
Make a motion to approve resolution 2020-255.
Councilman Sukram.
I'll take that.
Please cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item 29, Council Member Yerger item, motion to approve reconsideration of resolution 2020-237, accepting and awarding the Fremont Municipal Airport Terminal construction bid to Ronco Construction. This is a Council Member Yerger item. Go ahead, Council Member Yerger.
Yes, I asked to put this back on the council's agenda for some reconsideration discussion for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, I guess for me, because I voted in the affirmative on this in the first place, I'm looking for some reassurance to make sure that my vote was accurate with regards to absolute confidence that all of the utility infrastructure costs are actually covered in the bid that we received. I had some offline discussion with the engineer as to whether or not this is part of the bid process, et cetera, et cetera. The documents that were shared were inconclusive that that's occurred. Then it was suggested that they're in the specific specifications that were bid out, et cetera, but I didn't see those. And I just want to make sure that the taxpayers and ratepayers of Fremont have not in the past already paid for infrastructure relative to this project out of utility funds, and that we aren't going to be paying for infrastructure costs as a part of this process, that if in fact the city were contacted to do additional utility work, that the bid receiver here would be expecting to reimburse the city for any of the work done for the city outside of the original bid. I assume that that's probably all squared away in the contract. I just really wanted to make assurance that that was the case. And I didn't really have all of what I needed when we talked offline. So I felt I needed to put this on the agenda and see what the rest of the council thought relative to that assurance. The other thing that was of concern to me is that, and this was stated at the previous meeting, this was 8 out of 10 capital improvement priority items, that it is not one of the highest priorities. And we've had some changes in our city relative to things that have gone on with the election and the like. We now have a police department that's still in dire need of facilities. We have library expansion commitments and funding that the city hasn't been heavily involved in. We have the issues at Washington Heights for the other safety alternative route, since we didn't pass the viaduct situation out there. And so when we look at being 8 out of 10 in priority, I am having some second thoughts, I guess, as to whether or not this program that serves a few individuals, primarily in companies, rather than the entire citizenry, that some of these other projects would. I'm having some second thoughts about that, and I'm interested in hearing from the rest of the council how they feel about both of those issues, and that's why I brought it back.
Mayor,
Yeah.
I think probably before we open it up, we would want to take a motion to reconsider.
Right, I was
Okay.
gonna say this is a motion to approve reconsideration, so before we really open this up for discussion, we need to move to reconsider this item. So I would take a motion in that regard to reconsider this so we can move to further discussion. Councilman Jensen?
I had a question before we hear that motion. I just want to make sure I'm understanding correctly this motion. This motion would just be to approve the reconsideration. If we vote against approving this reconsideration, it leaves what we've done and what previous councils and everybody's done for the last several years, it leaves it in place and doesn't bring it back again. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilman Yerger?
Yes, I make the motion to bring this back for reconsideration.
Councilman Ellis?
I second that.
Cast your votes to reconsider this item.
Motion fails 3-6, 3-5, sorry.
Moving on to item 30. Councilmember Yerger item, ordinance to amend Fremont Municipal Code, Chapter 4, Health and Sanitation, Article 1, General Provisions, Section 4-101, 4-201, 4-202, and 4-601. This is a Council Yerger item. Go ahead, Councilman Yerger.
I would move to have the document I just handed received for the record for discussion purposes.
Councilman Legband?
Well, I have a,
So once again, we're here and you're handing out a piece of paper here and you're expecting us to vote on this right now when none of us have had a chance to study it. None of us have seen this before. You're handing out a piece of paper and this is what you want. I don't get it. If it's not done on time, continue it. But why do you keep handing out papers to us the night of the meeting expecting us to vote for your stuff?
Councilman Yerger?
I guess I have a motion on the floor, so.
Okay, is there a second to receive? Councilman Ellis?
I second it.
Cast your votes.
Motion fails 3-5.
Ooh. Councilman Yerger, you want to address the item?
Well, just for the record, I mean, if we're not going to receive the document, it's going to be difficult to discuss. I would like to address Councilman Legband's complaint. I put material in the packet originally that was draft material to modify these sections of city code. Subsequent to doing that, there was quite a bit of discussion between myself and legal, with suggestions that came from legal to, if you want to do what you're proposing, you need to make some modifications, which I was attempting or was willing to do at the time. Subsequent to that, did some further work and said, you know, there are a lot of other communities that are doing the same thing that we've been doing with regards to this resolution. And in looking at those, discovered that Papillion, for example, had a piece of city code that looked better than what I was crafting, and sent that to legal and said, gee, with this code, work as a replacement to what we have, better defining what we would be attempting to do. That occurred after any deadlines that we had, Councilman Legband, to get this material out. Ordinances require 3 readings. So it's not like we have to do anything other than consider this. My intent here was to put something before the council for consideration that would help improve the language that we have in this section that deals with the Board of Health. I don't know about anyone else in the room, but I got a lot of calls from the public relative to the action and the inaction by council as a result of COVID-19. And my attempt here in trying to improve on the language that we have is to help better delineate what the Board of Health does when they do it, what the council does and when we do it, et cetera, so that we would be working in tandem. I think if you were paying attention in the newspaper, I didn't find anybody else that implemented at the Board of Health level. They've all conducted city council meetings as a part of their discussion and gave the public an opportunity to speak in a public session as well as council members. We didn't do that. And my feeling is we should have done that as a justice to members of a council and as justice to the public. We took this up as a resolution at the previous meeting, suggested by the council that this needed to go through the Board of Health first. We sent it over there for their recommendation and opinion, and they took immediate action and implemented something on their own. And so the public and council didn't have opportunity to dialogue. I would hope that we would rectify that in the future, whether state law gives them the authority or not. As council says, they have the authority. The question is, should we have done like other communities have done and involved council and the public in making the decision? I think it's much easier and more palatable to the public if we had done those public hearings, but we chose not to. So in trying to modify the code, all I'm trying to do is better delineate what that might be. I've had the assistance of council. What I've handed out to you, the red line was from Papillion in section 4-101. The blue line was from city legal. The other clarifications were quite minor with regards to that. And so I understand your discomfort perhaps on moving on this tonight. I'm not asking for third reading. I'm only asking the council to consider this as an ordinance change that would improve matters relative to the Board of Health and what we just experienced. And that's really all I have to say on it. I was hopeful that we would at least address this as a matter so that not only would council, but the public would have a chance to dialogue on this topic and that we could improve on our code.
Any other comments from council? Councilman Legband.
If I'm not mistaken, almost every other city in the state has and does the exact same thing we already do. I don't know why we have to change things. We've already had this, we've had it in most of the other cities, the exact same thing. I don't know why we need to keep changing things that aren't broken.
Councilman Coons.
Yeah, I was just gonna add, as a special consideration, you know, we're talking about the health and well-being of the members of our community. And if you pay attention to the news, I mean, I, for one, just got over COVID. My wife just got over COVID. That's a pretty serious matter. And when the Board of Health makes a recommendation, we need to move quickly on that recommendation to help save lives and health of our citizens. Spending wasted time with grammar and word usage is detrimental to what we're trying to achieve here. So I think what we've got in place already works.
Councilman Jensen.
Yeah, my point is pretty much to Councilman Coons' point. Sometimes when these things come up, we have to act fast.
Turn your Zoom off, will you? You don't need to unmute
Sorry?
your Zoom. Turn your Zoom back into mute, would you? There you go. Now do it. Don't have to do that, just the mic.
We're okay now?
Now you're okay.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I just pretty much parroting Councilman Coons' position on this. And yes, when we get into these public health situations, and God willing, it isn't going to happen all the time. But when we get into these, sometimes we have to act quickly. We don't have time to convene an entire council meeting and wait for the Open Meetings Act for the time to pass. We need to get this through the public health fast, this is working good, just exactly the way it is. And I agree with other comments made to that point.
Councilman Ellis.
The reason this ordinance was brought up was just the process that was used. I believe that we didn't give the city, the citizens any input. We didn't give the council any input. There was no input given at the Board of Health meeting. Now, you're saying it takes time. Other cities have done this exponentially or faster by simply scheduling meetings one right after another. And so we could have easily held a Board of Health in the morning. We could have held an emergency session on the council that same day, had a first reading like Papillion did, held a second emergency meeting the second day, and held. So there was a process that we could do. I just have got a lot of feedback from people that says we had 3 or 4 individuals with no public input that made essentially a mandate. Now, it's not a mandate, it's a health directive. I understand the difference. But 4 individuals within the city made a directive with no input from the city citizens or the council whatsoever. We simply asked them for a recommendation, and we wanted that to come back. And we could have scheduled it the very same day if it was important to us. We could have scheduled an emergency meeting and held a public hearing first day, and just like Papillion the second day, but we didn't. So that's where I'm getting at, is I think this is a good step forward in modifying our code to match a lot of what the other cities around Nebraska are doing. But it was shot down today. So I would encourage Councilman Yeager to redo this ordinance and bring it back next week, next meeting.
Councilman Jensen.
Last time I'll speak on it, and he's certainly welcome to bring this back. What you're suggesting right now we have one doctor that has a vote. One doctor has a vote. And if we do this to where it's got to go through council after it goes through the Board of Health, then that doctor loses his vote. And I'm not comfortable with that at all.
So Councilman Jensen, I just wanted to clear something up real quick. I have been working with Councilmember Yerger on this ordinance. Under state statute 16238, the Board of Health does have the ability, the Board of Health does have the authority to pass rules and regulations that are enforceable by law. That state statute, we can't take that authority away. What Councilmember Yerger's revisions do is it adds into the statute what other communities have is not only can the Board of Health pass rules and regulations, they have the full and enforceable effect of law, but also they may recommend to the council to take certain action. So it kind of enumerates the pathway that many communities have taken to address the issue. But this revision that was presented tonight doesn't take away the authority of the Board of Health completely. I think we would, I certainly can answer more questions, but this ordinance itself does not inhibit the Board of Health from making rules and regulations. It just prescribes a procedure in case the Board of Health would prefer to recommend to the council.
Councilman Yerger.
I think this is an important matter for the council and certainly an important matter for the city. And pandemics are certainly important health issues that the city needs to grapple with. Process is important in doing that, and allowing public input and council input, I think, is also important in the process if time affords. And I think time did afford if we had availed ourselves appropriately. But I'm more than willing to continue this item as Councilmember Ellis suggested, so that council can have further time to consider what's in front of them and reflect upon what other communities have done across the state in this regard. My only hopes is that we would do things differently if this were to occur again than we did the last time. And I think this code helps facilitate the opportunity for that to occur. And as legal counsel just articulated, and thank you for the additional clarification, it gives council some authority here for us to do some things that are perhaps helpful in this matter. For example, it was unclear, and it's still unclear, And I know the public was outraged when they called me that says, you mean to say if I don't wear a mask, you're going to fine me $1,000 and put me in jail for 30 days? Well, I don't think that was the board's intent, but they leaned on the code as it was written. And so unless that was modified by the court, that's the penalty. I didn't change it in what I'm offering here. I left that to others to try to address. Other communities have far less fines, have implemented $500 fines in code or as little as $25, because technically, just as Chief Elliott has said during the board meeting and every place else that he's had an opportunity to speak, he can't enforce this with the members of the law enforcement that he has today. It's really just impossible for him to enforce this. And yet we have a mandate that they're supposed to enforce with finable offense. And so I think those are the kinds of things that council could have helped activate and discuss, and public hearing could have helped discuss. And we could have came up with a measure that, again, what we have is something that's a recommendation to the public, because law enforcement technically is not going to enforce it. And that's the way it is in most other communities as well. They have these mandates, but they're not being enforced. The public needs to comply. I full well agree that for your personal safety and for the safety and respect of others, you should treat people like you would want to be treated, and you should protect yourself. But we should have discussed it and give the public an opportunity. So I will make a motion to continue this item to the next meeting to give everybody an opportunity to reflect on it, think about what's here, and we can discuss it at the next meeting. That's my motion.
Councilman Ligman.
No matter how many times we put this off or discuss it, it's going to be 50-50. Half the people in the town are mad about it. Half, if not more, are very happy about it and say we need to do it. But no matter how many times we talk about it and fight over this, it's going to be 50-50. So I don't know what the accomplishes to keep putting this off.
All I would say is that I think that the intention for the Board of Health meeting was to get this enacted as quickly as possible, and that's what the directive did. And according to what Dr. Seitz and the board was, they wanted to get it as quickly in as possible. Looking back, there was a lot of comment on this for the last couple of weeks that, everyone has heard. And I think the intention was to move quickly. And, I think they did that, and people of Fremont have complied and done a great job. And we're all trying to do our part right now to tackle this pandemic and relieve the pressure on our hospitals. And so, no matter how it gets done, if it comes here or goes there, the intent was it got done, their directive was in, the people are complying and doing the best we can, and when we're moving forward. So whatever decision you decide as council, I would just, say that I don't know if the process that we took was taken was necessarily broken. I just think that the intent was to move as quickly as possible, what information they had at that point. So,
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
They acted responsibly. This board had never met. You know what I mean? In fact, there's been a vacancy on there for years. Never filled it simply because it was inactive. They met, and I think they took a responsible action well within the authority. Their state statute clearly says they can establish rules and have the full force of the law. They did that with the authorities they are granted by state law and city code. So wrong or right, they took the action, they immediately did it. Now, whether council wants to come back and pass your own, that's your choice. But they took the responsibility and took it seriously and did something.
Councilman Yerger has a motion to, was it continue, correct? Continue to next meeting. Councilman Ellis.
I'll second that motion.
Ready? Cast your votes.
The motion carries 5-3.
All right. That will be continued to the next meeting. I would take a motion to adjourn.
So
Councilman Gibson.
Make the motion to adjourn.
Cast your votes.
Was it a second?
Second, I would, first by Vern, second by Jensen.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Looks like Councilmember Gibson and Jensen, could I please have you vote?
Councilman Jensen and Councilman Gibson,
Gibson,
please put,
can you
yeah,
please
yes.
vote for roll call? Thank you.
Thank you.
You got it, you got it.
Motion carries 8-0.
We are adjourned.